Hello and welcome to SentinelOne presents Cyber Superheroes, unveiling the unsung heroes of security in association with ETCISO. I'm Ridhima Bhatnagar, and what promises to be a very insightful conversation is going to be around the world of security today. Not just physical security that we see at our borders, but also digital security that is so imperative for each one of us as we live most of our lives, unfortunately, on the digital world. So while you have our armed forces who guard us while we sleep peacefully every single night, it's the CISOs, the Chief Information Security Officers, who take on that role very silently, day in and day out, to guard their organizations and eventually all of us from any possible cyber threat, and also look into a future that's unpredictable and changing as we speak. And in fact, today we have one such superhero joining us today, Jacxine Fernandez, Vice President Information Security at the Bangalore International Airport. So Jacxine, thank you so much for taking all the time and joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
How do you feel about the introduction that was given and the role of a superhero? How are you feeling? Do you feel some superheroes that have impacted you, some superpowers?
I would like to say that I don't think you should put us up this much. We have inflated egos as it is. We believe we are saving the world. But no, I think we do fulfill an important niche that society needs us in to protect the digital world. But I don't think we necessarily do it silently, or we are unsung. If you look at the event that we are in, we are a loud bunch of people, but I think we do perform a very niche role in society.
Loud for the right reasons, I would say.
Absolutely.
So, you know, when we talk about superheroes, and the only reason we wanted to draw this comparison is because a lot of people might not be fully aware of what the role of a CISO is and what goes on to protect an organization day in and day out, or, you know, from an industry perspective, for the kind of threats that we're seeing every day. So let's take back. Do you want to talk us through about the role of CISOs at large, the role of protecting an organization at large from an industry perspective, the kind of challenges that we're seeing?
Oh, absolutely. So I think the question was absolutely framed wonderfully. But the thing that I like to differentiate is because the technical aspect of protection is actually much more simpler for a lot of people. You don't necessarily need a CISO or a cyber head for that. But at the same time, the business enabler part of this business, and a few of my colleagues and peers have mentioned about it. So that is, I think, what comes up, because if you lock everything down, you effectively lock down the business also. But in this case, you have to ensure that you put adequate security and controls so that you can allow the business to grow, to innovate, and do all of those things that the business still needs to do, and hopefully pay our salaries at the same time for. So I think that is the kind of challenge and the balance that we have to attain. From a threat perspective, a lot of things are out there. I don't think, at least from a personal front as a CISO or as a head of cyber, I don't think I can tell you everything that's out there, because there are a lot of things we keep discovering on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's a constant challenge to stay up to date. That threat intelligence is something that keeps us also, you know, on our toes to make sure that we know what's happening out there.
Okay, so I'm going to reframe my questions. I've realized you're not going to be a very easy guest to get a lot out very easily. So let me reframe it then. Because when we said you take on the role of superheroes, right? Let's begin from that. Do you have one particular superhero that maybe you liked growing up from your childhood, that you see having some sort of impact in your role as a CISO, or somebody who deals with cybersecurity on a day-to-day basis?
So I have three characters, both from a, from a comic book perspective, I have two heroes, and from history, I have one. Comic book, both in the Marvel universe, I like Iron Man, and from DC, I love Batman. Nice. Purely because of the fact that they don't have superpowers, but they are one of the most influential superheroes in their respective universes. And that is because of the intellect and their drive, which is why they make a difference. So that's a motivating factor. Big fans of both of those characters. My daughter is a huge fan of Iron Man. I am a big fan of Batman. From history, I would say that I do look to a lot of characters, but I follow something which is misattributed to a Carthaginian general called Hannibal. So when he wanted to take on the might of Rome, when Rome was the biggest empire, and he took his army and elephants across the Alps. Before that, when he told the plan, he said that everybody told him there is no way. He said, I will either find a way or I'll make one. This is what I believe a lot of cybersecurity professionals continue to do.
So is that your life motto as you approach work almost on a day-to-day basis?
Absolutely. It is actually a motto that I have on my WhatsApp and everything. So it's a Latin phrase. It's called aut inveniam, aut viam faciam. So that essentially means what Hannibal said.
Lovely, lovely. So I want to understand, for most people, if they're associated with an organization or a sector, they pretty much know what their day-to-day work will look like, what the typical day at work will look like. Anybody dealing with cybersecurity, it's the opposite, because you don't know how the day could pan out to or what the situation could unfold. Is that a sense of fear or is that challenging? Is that what makes it exciting?
No, I would say that's what makes it exciting, but at the same time, I'm going to continue the thread. Probably I'll not, let's say, echo everybody's sentiments in the same way. So I tell a lot of people, and when somebody asks me, how do you sleep at night? I said, peacefully like a baby. Because the fact of the matter is, if you are firefighting every day, if you are running around every day, there is fundamentally more, there are more fundamental problems than that. You can't be doing that every day. We'll all burn out. We are humans at the end of the day. So there has to be some, let's say, a strategic plan in place, a systemic plan in place which addresses these things. And I say this for a lot of others. So if it's a CFO, they have their workloads tripled, doubled, during year ending, quarter ending and everything. If it's a chief marketing officer or a commercial officer, when a product is launching or something of the sort, they have go through these stress and sleepless nights. The only difference for somebody in cybersecurity is we don't know when it will happen, but we have to keep our eyes open for it. But I think in that sense, I don't think we are doing anything more than what, let's say, the other departments are doing, but at the same time, just the unpredictability of it is what does. But again, I don't think it's fear. I think fear is something that's gone into the background. Earlier on, it might have been a motivator for some, but now it's just challenging. Every day trying to learn something new, try and find out how these, let's say, threat actors play out there. So that's the challenge, I would say.
That's lovely, because that's exactly what I was going to ask you, that how do you sleep at night? And you said you sleep like a baby. So that's exactly what I wanted to know. Do these things play on your mind that they could be a new threat when I wake up tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's given, it's part of the job. The idea is, and this is like, again, a mentor of mine from a previous organization has said, don't come to me with problems, come to me with answers.
Yeah.
Because anybody can tell me what the problem is. So from that perspective, so yes, I would say that, let's say, as we tackle the day and when we go to sleep, maybe, a good night's sleep will refresh our brain. We get up with maybe a few more ideas than we had the previous day to try and see how we can solve the problem. And yes, a new problem could present itself. So that is absolutely yes. So I think that sleeping at night like a baby is going to probably help the cybersecurity community a little better.
So Jacxine, what I want to now understand is, because every industry, every sector has very different threats, and they also have very different ways of coping up with those threats or either tackling with those threats. So from a larger airport aviation perspective, if I had to ask you top 3 threats that are ailing us today.
So I would say a few of them, and I speak passionately about this too in other forums also. I think the industrial control system security is something that is coming to the forefront. Over the last decade, what we have seen is that threat actors have started going after your power plants, your manufacturing plants, and all of these things. And here, the impact of these threats are not purely limited to just the reputation and a loss of data and financial impact. It's actually physical in nature. So it could lead to injuries, even loss of life. So it's become very phygital in that sense. So it's the cyber threat has really hit closer to the core of what society has, which is we value human life. So that has become something which has, over the last decade, I think, become more and more prominent. And I see this as one of the most important areas that I think as society, not just here in India, but globally we have to secure. And we've seen enough attacks and this should serve as warning bells to us to really get our act together. And I think this is not purely just with the CISOs or just with the organization. I think it's the entire ecosystem, the supply chain, our manufacturers, our OEMs, our service providers, all of them have to play a part, because this is a legacy. We've built a debt of this kind of insecure stuff that we have. And now we just have to try and take off this debt, and it's not left only up to the organization or the OEMs. We'll, I think, collectively have to do this. And I think that's one of the major areas. The other areas, and I don't necessarily think it's only purely a problematic in aviation, but I think aviation also suffers from this, is the privacy of the data and how we use it. Thankfully, in India, we have the DPDP Act, which has come in, and the guidelines are getting framed, which will allow organizations throughout India to be able to actually tackle this in a very focused and concerted manner. But I think this is one thing, because I think, unfortunately, even the data owner, as citizens, I think we do not value our information enough. When you go to a shopping mall or to a outlet and they ask you
for your number, you don't ask them again.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, we just and if you give your number, sir, madam, you will get another 10% discount, and we give it away. We just don't realize the import. Was it worth only $10? Because after that, you're dealing with these messages and these calls and everything, and you're wondering, where did I go wrong? Yeah, that 10% discount is where you went wrong. Yeah. So I think those, I would say, are a few of the critical areas that for cybersecurity that we'll have to try and solve.
Very fascinating, and I agree with you with what you're saying. The bait or the temptation of a discount vis-a-vis where your data is being used, right? I'll come to that in just a bit, but because what you said from an aviation perspective again, right? Even if you look at India today vis-a-vis some of our peers, of course the footfalls that we get is completely different, but as we level up to the next level of digitization and we say that your face will become your boarding pass, we want to have a seamless in and out, we want to do away with paper passports, which means data is going to be at the key of how everything is around it and the technology around it as well. So what I want to understand is, one, how prepared is India in that scenario to go to that next level? And in a scenario like this where everything will revolve essentially on technology, what are the big risk factors?
I think the risk factors for something like this is going to stay the same. The threat actors who want to weaponize this kind of data, which includes biometric data now. Yeah. So that is an ever-present risk that is there. But thankfully, I think India as a country and the government has recognized these threats very much before we've seen a large-scale amount of attacks around this. So whether it's something like where your face is your passport or your face is your access kind of thing, I think the government has done an amazing job. We have a very focused body with Digitization Foundation who does all of this and looks after it, and I think they've done a fabulous job. So, and it sets the tone when it comes from the government telling how let's say, how seriously they take this and how they want, whether it's airlines, whether it's airports, whether it's anybody else or any of the stakeholders in this entire ecosystem, how serious they're about it, and the guidelines that come along with it are very, let's say, rock solid around it. Of course, we will always improve, as the environment around us starts evolving and, let's say, newer threat actors come, new vectors come in, we will have to keep evolving. But at least we have, like you said, right, CISOs have to continuously learn. Yeah. So does the entire ecosystem with the government, with the airports, with the airlines. All of us are constantly evolving and making sure that we all play our part. And I think that's definitely going to be absolutely critical for us to, let's say, safeguard your biometric data as you fly from one part of the country to another. Yeah. So we have the guidelines, we have the technology, and we are absolutely implementing all of that that's possible.
So Jacxine, just taking on from what you're saying, again, as we move forward, it's twofold. One is, how is our own perception to data changing? Are we now realizing that, as you said, a small thing like giving out your number could have an eventuality? And the other also is the kind of threats that we're also seeing is changing in nature. If I could just ask you for an example, say in the last few years, how have you seen the threats that have been made, and what is the kind of nature in terms of their evolution itself?
I think And again, see, we are a microcosm of the threats that the entire globe
Absolutely,
sees.
yeah.
So what could happen in another industry or globally is something that we will also have to tackle one. So from that perspective, let's say the age of Gen AI is upon us, and the capabilities of what that can do is becoming amazing. More and more we learn about it. And we've seen enough, instances in the media where we've seen cases of deep fakes, people getting videos are being put out there.
Audio calls of their family
audio
members,
calls,
yeah.
Absolutely. So these are things that also worry us, can somebody fake it? Now, not necessarily. So I could be the person at the airport, but if some threat actor can try and bypass the security controls, which today absolutely not possible, but those are ever-present threats. Anything connected can be hacked is what we go by. So there is no 100% security, but this is what we constantly strive for. So if you're some of the newer things that we have to tackle with, and again, this is, like I said, every player in this ecosystem playing their part. So we have guidelines with regards to Gen AI, how we can use it and everything, but unfortunately the threat actors don't follow guidelines. So we have to now find out what is it that they are weaponizing on this, and how is it possible that if they can try and circumvent any of the controls that we have in place. So these are the kind of let's say new age challenges that we are dealing with, and companies have already fallen victim to some of this. We've seen the case out of Hong Kong where a CFO on a Teams meeting was actually spoofed, and somebody ended up transferring millions of dollars. So this is a real risk, and it could happen to whether it's aviation or any other industry. I think that's something that we will have to tackle and, let's say, address pretty soon.
So you said that there are guidelines that are already given as far as Gen AI and other emerging technology is concerned. What are these kind of guidelines, and how are you seeing the adaptation to these guidelines?
So I think, see, both the Ministry of Electronics and IT have put out guidelines around it. In the aviation sector, even the regulator has put out certain guidelines around it. So it is for each one of these stakeholders to look at it and understand how it impacts their systems and how they go about using it. So sometimes it could be about the organizations themselves implementing something for, let's say, the customer experience or for better operational efficiency. Any one of these things could be the reason why we are approaching it. But at the same time, it has to be responsible, it has to be safe, it has to be secure. We cannot let it loose without any guardrails, because that is, because Gen AI, like any other technology, is a double-edged sword. Absolutely. So it can be used for good and it can be used for bad, and we should not have this without guardrails. And these are the guardrails that these guidelines do come in, and I mentioned a few of these authorities. They've come out with these things. It is up to us to, let's say, review them, assess them, and see that we implement them, because I don't think any organization has any leeway with regards to compliance as per se. You have to comply. If the regulation is out there, compliance is non-negotiable.
Yeah, you use a very interesting word, which is guardrails, right? So guardrails also means, in terms of the ecosystem that we are creating at large, of how we need to protect and how we need to go forward, which means you will need support in terms of partners and the people that you get on board. For example, SentinelOne. So when you go out in the market, what is the kind of partnership that you're looking at to get a partner on board to say that, okay, this goes down well with my ethos, with my ethics, and I see this is a long-term partnership?
So I think from choosing who we work with, as cybersecurity professionals, one of the things I think, like coming back to your question earlier on, you said, do you learn something new every day? So I need partners who are constantly doing the same thing that I'm doing.
And enabling you for that.
Absolutely. So, are they also looking, because, and their let's say, horizon of visibility is far bigger than mine.
Absolutely.
So, so because of that, we would like, as cybersecurity professionals, to work with companies who actually have that same ethos. Now, the other thing is, you could be the best in the world, but if you're not there when I need you, what difference does it make? So I think this is one of the other factors why we work with companies like SentinelOne, is because we know that if we pick up the phone and we make a call about some problem that we have, there will be people standing next to us, shoulder to shoulder, to help us at that point of time. And there is a constant engagement. You know, we are, like I told you earlier, we are a loud, rumbunctious kind of a set of people, the cybersecurity class. So we want a constant connect. We want to know what's happening. So having a partner who constantly is there to hold your hand and tell you, hey, by the way, do you know, we do this, we do that, we've done this, here are the new things that we've brought out into the market. This kind of helps us, you know, it keeps us also aware of what's the newer stuff that's happening out there, what are the newer threats, how we can protect it better. So these are the kind of qualities that we look for in a partner, and that's how we end up with somebody like SentinelOne.
So sounds like a very well thought out, harmonious relationship and partnership that's working out well. But if I had to ask you, post getting that partner on board, how have things changed or evolved as far as day-to-day operations are concerned?
I think there is a shared responsibility. Absolutely. So there are things that we have to look at as a cybersecurity professional. There are some expectations from the partner. Now, I don't think any partnership for that matter can lay claim to the fact that it's been absolutely, let's say, a bumpy free ride.
Yeah, bed of roses.
Yeah, so I think, actually roses is an absolute apt metaphor, because with roses comes the thorns.
Thorns, yeah.
So from that perspective, I think there is always room for improvement. And the qualities that you mentioned, one of the qualities is that the intent to fix that. True. That is going to be key. So we could have problems, that's absolutely given, but do we have the right kind of people with the right mentality and the right intent to fix these problems is what we are looking for. Yeah. So post this thing, we've been absolutely great. Newer stuff comes into the platform and all, and we want to leverage that. We want to see how we can improve our defense capabilities so that, you know, people like you can be safer in the digital world.
Much obliged for all the work that you're doing. But Jacxine, I just want to make a slight deviation from your work to your personal, because the interconnected is not just for work but for life as well, right? Earlier in the conversation you said you sleep like a baby. Was that the case for a younger Jacxine as well?
Oh no, younger Jacxine was not as what do you say, demure or
not so mindful, not so
mild as this. No, but no, nothing too wild or crazy. I think that time the hunger was you know, there, and you wanted to do more. You wanted to prove stuff like that. Sure. But I think age tempers you down, and you don't want to prove anything to anybody anymore. But at the same time, you know, I always tell you need something other than cyber.
Absolutely.
To, you know, keep you engaged. You can't think cyber 24/7. Your brain will, at least one part of your brain will end up rotting. So I do like gaming. So I'm So I do a bit of role-playing games or multiplayer strategy games. So that's what keeps me occupied. Other than that, so to keep my brain a little, let's say, more efficient.
Lovely. Jacxine, the final word, if you had to give an advice to your younger self, what would that be, and also to a younger CISO today?
I think for younger CISOs today, I think keep the hunger for learning, because I think that's the only way you're going to progress ahead. And take care of your soft skills, because in cybersecurity, one of the problems that some of us have is articulating cybersecurity to non-cybersecurity folks. So it could be in the form of trying to get funds for an initiative you want to do, explaining it to a board of directors, or for that matter, explaining it to friends and family.
Yeah.
If you don't know, and you know, the only thing is that Papa does this or Mama does that, apne ko malum nahi. So that's a very thing. So we need to learn the soft skill of actually explaining what cybersecurity. I think that's one of the things I would leave for younger CISOs. Younger Jacxine, I would leave it as, don't do some of the stupid things that you did without getting into the details.
We're not asking you details. But Jacxine, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking out the time and doing this for us. And it was absolutely insightful. So many new things for us to learn. Hopefully the viewers have had many takings as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.